Integra? That sounds very, very familiar.
Actually, the Integra first launched in 1986 to help kick off the Acura brand, and the Integra went on until 2006, 20 years on sale, until it was discontinued. Now it's back. This is the new one, and we have to check it out.
This is the Marysville Auto Plant in Ohio, where the latest Integra recently started rolling off the line, with this plant's team being the first to build that model in the USA, where Acura's built other models since 1995. To help meet the styling requirements for the new car, the Marysville plant leveraged expertise in laser brazing technology that joins the roof and side panels together for a more seamless appearance, and a stronger body while creating the Integra's particularly challenging roof shape in the factory. And new equipment was also brought online to create the seamless dashboard by heating and stretching and molding the entire thing out of a single piece of material. So the end result looks something like this, and its Canadian pricing from $38,850 with standard A-Spec package and CVT like my tester, or the deluxe Elite A-Spec above it from $44,350 with more high-end content. We'll dive into the differences between these two trim grades and several areas where I found my base model tester to be feeling pretty sparse later in this video, but I'll give you a clue right here. If you're test driving one of these, be sure to pay close attention to the seating and nearby accommodations. Much more on that later.
I feel like I'm sitting in a hammock or something.
The front wheels are driven by a 1.5-liter turbo 4-cylinder VTEC engine, good for 200 horsepower and 192 pounds of torque, with premium gas recommended. Remember, the A-Spec kit is standard equipment here, dialing up the sporting appeal with 18-inch wheels, special badging, gloss body accents and window surrounds, and a rear spoiler and diffuser. It's a good helping of athletic visuals for the dollar. Mostly, this car looks as good as it drives too. Much more on that for you coming up later in the road test. Two key reasons to consider the Integra. It's a liftback like the original, meaning that it's a leader when it comes to cargo space and flexibility versus competitors with a more traditional sedan design. And second, you can order yours with a 6-speed manual transmission if you like to drive with both feet and row your own gears, and that makes this one of the only cars anywhere, and especially in the luxury scene, with a manual gearbox. My tester has the other transmission, the continuously variable transmission CVT, also a good pick depending on what you like. And a little later on in this video, I'm going to detail what you can expect from it from right here in the driver's seat in response to a variety of different situations and driving styles. So road test coming up for you, night drive coming up for you, but first, there are some things you've got to see in here.
So I'll give you a quick look around at your driving environment in here, and then you and I have some things to discuss that we noticed that I think people are going to want to see. And remembering this is the base model car, this is a sub $39,000 machine, and you can step up the feature content in here if you like. So first thing, fairly conventional layout here. If you've driven any modern Honda, you'll be familiar with the simple 3-dial climate control system. Big tactile dials there on the outside, easy to use with your gloves on if you've got them, and push buttons here in the middle, as well as tactile buttons down there for supplemental functions as well. Basic infotainment screen up here. This is the factory interface. We just press connect there to get our Android Auto on screen. There's my Spotify, just how I left it on my phone from earlier. Maps as well. And then if we want, back out to the main screen here.
Is that standard on all the models?
The A-Spec Elite, a step above this, has the larger infotainment.
Okay, yeah, I was saying, as much as how big it looks, that's all dead space.
Yeah, we've got a lot of empty space here. So actually, your screen there is only about like this wide. So wired Android Auto in this case, have to plug in. No wireless charging for your phone. Another interesting thing to note down here, this is the one and only USB plug in the entire car, right? So if you're charging anything more than your smartphone, you're going to have to use this with some sort of an adapter. Conventional shifter for the CVT automatic with drive, and pull down there for the sport pattern. Over here to the left, we've got the dynamic mode. We can toggle between comfort, normal, and sport.
Well, cool sound effects.
I'm pretty sure that sounds like something in Gran Turismo as you're changing the menu selection.
Yeah.
It's almost the same. Engine auto stop there if you like as well. Pull this from the parking brake, push down to turn the parking brake off. and your brake hold function there, keeping the car in place while you're in drive without the need to keep your foot on the brake pedal. So storage here, 2 proper cup holders, very simple center console there as well, not particularly deep or wide, and there's no power or charging provisions in there either. So another thing that both of us noticed pretty much right off the bat here is to do with these seats.
The lumbar is like not in the right position or doesn't exist. I feel like I'm sitting in a hammock or something. Like there's no, like I got no...
You need more support, James.
I'm not cozied into the seat. I'm like at my uncle's house and I'm sitting in his 40-year-old chair.
Let me put that in perspective for you. What you're looking for here is more support, because I agree with you. I feel like I'm sitting more on the seat where I want to feel like I'm more sitting in the seat.
Yeah, like I feel like I'm like sliding around.
Right, so in a car like this, with the sporty reflexes that we've got going on here, you might expect a little bit more of a supportive seat to support the kind of driving style this car feels built for. The other thing I want to draw your attention to, though, if you're considering one of these, and you happen to be a driver that needs or enjoys a good bit of lumbar support, you're not going to find it here on these base model seats. There actually is no lumbar adjustment. And so when you're saying you feel like you're sitting in a hammock, I actually feel that in my lower back. I want this to be more solid and kind of pushed out more, and I want this to feel like it has more resistance against my weight.
Yeah, like this is where your lumbar support should be, but there's nothing there. It's just empty.
The lumbar, if it's a deal breaker for you or not, that's up to you. Everyone's back is different. Everyone has different needs from the seats in their car. But if you are going with a base model Integra like this one, I'd encourage you to make sure you're going to find these seats comfortable enough, especially for long distance drives.
So hopefully that's a good look at the interior and functionality for you. Now, let's see how this drives.
The road test is where I saw some of the Integra's very best work, as well as a notable complaint, and if you're about to pull the trigger and cut a check on one of these, this will probably be the most important part of the video for you. I'm about to tell you how much I think you're going to enjoy driving this machine. The Integra's secret sauce is its reflexes. The steering feels good from the tips of your fingers to the contact patches, paddle shifters, and a rim that's slim enough to really encourage you to take hold with both hands and get engaged. The steering feel in action is fast, light, and playful. The effort is light and easygoing, but the ratio is very quick. So if you prefer a fast and light and energetic feel from your steering over something heavier and more demanding, I think you'll love how this turns even tiny inputs to the wheel into big reactions from the car, meaning you're often steering with your wrists and not your arms and shoulders most of the time. Suspension tuning gives the handling a similarly lively and energetic feel. Bumps and dips and undulations and smooth roads that some cars filter out or numb down all contribute to a ride that's active, a little busy even, and that gives the enthusiast driver plenty of feedback about what's going on beneath them by allowing plenty of nicely controlled motion, rather than trying to all-out eliminate it. The brakes are right there too, completing the trio: spirited handling, spirited steering, and spirited braking, thanks to what I found to be surprisingly good brake pedal feel for a car at this price point. Specifically, there's strong engagement at the very top of the pedal. They're not far from hair trigger. Stopping power builds nicely as you squash down harder on the brakes. They're easy to modulate, stops are drama-free, the ABS is hardly intrusive at all, and by nicely balancing steering, handling, and suspension off of one another, they've created a certain crafted feel to the drive that's easy to appreciate. However, not all is well when it comes to noise levels. The factory Continental tires roared over some of the more coarsely textured asphalt surfaces I commonly drive on, turning in generous amounts of tire and road noise even at relatively low speeds. Coarsely textured highways, which are the norm in much of my Northern Ontario locale, add wind noise to the mix as well, and that can make for a fairly noisy drive. And on Sudbury's bashed up back roads, slow and cautious is the order of the day. The Integra suspension prefers winding back roads and on-ramps, not the bumpy stuff. So to summarize, it's fairly smooth and quiet sailing over fairly smooth and quiet pavement, though more rough and coarsely textured surfaces can really spike those noise levels. The driver's environment is simple and easygoing, also pretty informative thanks to a digital instrument cluster that's easy to reconfigure, and has graphics that are sharp enough to be easy reading in the dark. Closer look at that coming up for you later. It's more formal than flashy in here, highly conventional, logical, and decorated with high-value chrome and metallic accents that help draw the eyes to key areas, while strong horizontal line work in the dash visually widens the cabin. But the engine is the real star of the show. The Integra runs the latest version of Honda's L-Series 1.5-liter turbo four-cylinder, which initially went into global production back in 2001. You've got dual overhead chain-driven camshafts which are hollow to save weight, as well as both variable timing control, or VTEC, to independently optimize the timing of both intake and exhaust cams. and separate to that, VTEC to increase exhaust valve lift and keep the party going as the revs climb outside of the turbocharger's optimal range. Get into the turbo and you've got maximum torque available from 1800 RPM, hardly off of idle. That torque stays on strong until about 5000 revs, by which point the VTEC system has started to work those exhaust valves more aggressively for additional high RPM pulling power. So from the driver's seat, it's this smooth and responsive low rev performance blending into a high RPM power surge that stays on strong until just about redline. Most small displacement turbo engines have already run out of steam by this point and grabbed the next gear, so the Integra's engine gives drivers two places to go depending on their right foot and current mood. You've got piles of modern turbocharged torque down low, and that snarling VTEC changeover and power bump up high, blended and balanced together for an engine that does some of its best work when it's spinning fast.
But we do have to talk about the transmission.
So we'll start with just a quick drive around my neighborhood. Residential, low speed limit, lots of stop signs. Rolling up to a stop sign here. So just in our normal drive mode, some residential area driving here. Watch the revs and watch the speedometer as I just apply some gentle throttle to get rolling off the line here. What you probably noticed there is the car started moving as soon as the revs started climbing. We didn't have the RPMs going up first, then the car's speed following, right? And watch how, as the revs start climbing there, the vehicle starts moving right away, right? So we don't have the RPMs kind of leading the acceleration. And in that way, this responds just like what you're expecting from a conventional automatic. Do that one more time here. So from a stop, just lightly onto the throttle. Watch how the revs are more or less trying to stay steady there, a little under 2000. And that they're not really shifting up and down in the sense of stepped gears. So we get that initial sort of push off the line, and then the revs more or less just stay planted as we accelerate up to 40 or 50 kilometers an hour here, driving around in a residential zone. So two things to notice in this sort of driving. Number one, the vehicle gets up and moving just the way you'd expect with a conventional automatic. That was a design goal for this CVT transmission. And number two, once we are up and moving around the speed that we like, our revs aren't shifting up and down as we step through different gears. They're just more or less being held steadily in place. And the smoother and lower we keep those revs, the smoother the drive and the lower our fuel consumption. So in terms of your gentle, efficient driving around, the priority of the transmission here is to keep the revs low. We'll just accelerate up to highway speed here in no particular hurry. Probably 30 or 40% into the throttle there. Watch the revs on the left hanging out a little under 3000 RPM, but at the same time the tachometer on the right there increasing. So we're actually speeding the vehicle up without speeding the engine up. Now as we're approaching our cruising speed, the revs are dropping. What you didn't see there were upshifts and downshifts stepping through conventional gears, just the engine RPM staying basically smooth and steady, and that's more efficient and smoother and quieter. Now let's try that again from a stop here up to highway speed. A little heavier on the throttle here though. Again, revs staying roughly planted, speedometer increasing, revs staying about the same. Nice smooth glide up to speed, efficient, relatively quiet, easier on fuel since we're not shifting. There's our highway cruising speed of about 105. Set the cruise. We'll watch our revs kind of drop under 2000 here. We're actually going up a little bit of a hill right now, so we're using a bit more revs. Watch the tachometer cresting the hill right about here. So you should actually see those revs drop off just a little bit. Yeah, there we go. 1800 RPM, 105 kilometers an hour. Smooth and efficient acceleration there. We've got a highway speed merge ramp here going uphill where I like to use full throttle. This is a very steep hill. You can't see it from this camera angle. This is one of the steepest sort of highway climbs in the Sudbury area where I live. Full throttle up the hill. Here's what to expect. So did you catch that there? At full throttle, or closer to full throttle, we've got the transmission simulating the upshifts that you'd expect from a more conventional automatic, giving you a response that's more in line with what you might be expecting. So here we go with the paddle shifters. We're in sport mode. Just give you a little sense of what to expect here in terms of response. upshift's fairly quick and responsive here. You can see, I think, my hand on the paddle shifter. But downshift's losing me a little bit here because when you click the paddle, visually it responds quickly enough, right? You click the paddle, you see the tachometer needle move, but the shift is fairly soft and gentle, and to your ears, there's actually this disconnect because the tachometer needle is moving more quickly than the engine speed actually is. There's a little bit of a delay there, and so that tachometer needle display is a little bit over optimistic in terms of the shift speed when you're gearing down. On the screen it looks pretty quick. To my ear it sounds a fair bit slower than what we're getting there. So one more time here from a stop up to highway speed, full throttle. We're in the sport drive mode. Our transmission is also in sport mode. I'm not going to use the paddles. Generally, the transmission will be faster than that on its own. So here we go from a dig. If you're a driving enthusiast and you can't have the manual transmission for some reason, maybe it makes more sense to have the automatic where and how you drive. Maybe you're sharing the car with someone who prefers the automatic transmission. I think you'll find this contributes to the overall sporting experience of the car. I think you'll find this is very good as far as the CVT transmission goes. If you haven't driven a modern one lately, I think you'll be really impressed with how far they've come. However, of course, if you are a diehard and you'd rather shift with 3 pedals and the 6-speed stick, it is a beautiful thing that you still have that option with this car too.
Remember, if you like, you can opt for the 6-speed manual as a $0 option, but you'll need to step up into the Elite A-Spec model grade to do it. There is no manual transmission available on the base model this year. Once the sun's gone down, the Integra's sleek lighting signature comes to life. Its LED segmented tail lamps in the back, and Acura's jewel eye headlights on duty up front for forward illumination. Inside, I appreciated the relatively restrained use of color in the dash and console lighting after dark, with simple clean white text and dials and accents set against the darkness, which, combined with logical segmentation of most controls, makes it pretty easy to find your way around in here in the dark. The instrument cluster is a digital display flanked by LED indicators to keep vital data visually separate and easy to read, and though subtle, the way the LED backlighting around the knurled climate control dials picks up the light after dark was a luxurious touch I appreciated. Headlight performance is strong with clean white light and powerful spotlighting just ahead of the vehicle, as well as a precise beam cutoff with the low beams keeping plenty of light where it's needed and little where it's not. Illumination into tree lines and culverts beside dark highways is very good. The auto high beam system knows what it's doing, and though at times I wished for maybe just 5 or 10% further reach up the road with the low beams, this ultimately has the look and feel of a high-performing lighting system that should easily satisfy for the dollar. And if you appreciate that little look into what to expect from your new Integra once the sun goes down, then be sure to leave me a like if you're watching on YouTube and consider subscribing to my channel so you don't miss any new uploads.